Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. You can follow us on all of your favorite social media platforms at Rockies Now, Facebook, X, Instagram, and the Threads page. I'm your host, Steven, along with co host Tom. Tom, how did your Halloween week go?
It was pretty good. We got a fair action of trick-or-treaters coming by, in my neighborhood because I live a little bit further away from the city of Chicago. But all in all, it was pretty good. I didn't go overboard on too much candy because I do at times have a bit of a sweet tooth. My favorite candy is Milky Ways, so
Mm,
I didn't go nuts on too many of them. So.
yeah, my favorite candy is milk chocolate M&Ms. Those are the best candy in the world. Unfortunately, my mom she brought them home for all of us. And man, it was good, and thankfully I didn't get sick. But yeah, I mean, overall it was a good week. We had some trick or treaters. It was I don't know, maybe 10 or 11, and I live in a about an hour north of Denver, and I live in a city called Loveland. For those who listen, might know where Loveland is. It's a pretty decent city. It's growing, and so we had some kids, but it wasn't really busy. I dressed up as Maverick from Top Gun, or at least I tried to. It wasn't the greatest, but I was able to pull out a aviator's jacket and some aviator's glasses. But oh well, it was fun. I could have dressed up as a baseball player, but my baseball pants were in the washer. So, um, anyway, folks, I hope you've had a wonderful week. Let's get to today's podcast. We're going to be talking about a couple of subjects. Of course, with the off season beginning, we have the GM meetings going on, but before we get started on the big stuff, let's congratulate Rocky center fielder Brenton Doyle on winning his first career Gold Glove. That was really not super surprising, Tom, because we kind of already knew when he was coming up, and his defense was obviously flashing in the outfield in Coors Field. And, and his UZR and his, defensive ratings, in the outfield were just off the charts. He was guaranteed to win the Gold Glove at least the middle of the season. That's the way things were going, and he he ran away with the award, and he was able to win his first Gold Glove in center field for the Rockies.
It was to me, honestly, and I think I would like to think among the voters, it was a no-brainer as well. And I can't post this on the screen here, but I was gonna post this to my Twitter/X page. MLB Network showed up a little bit of a stat thing for him in terms of how he played defensively this season. So here's the thing: he led all center fielders in defensive runs saved, outs above average, and he led all players in fielding run value. And here's a very interesting one that I think is very conducive to Coors Field, especially. He led all players in ultimate zone rating, and what that means is in terms of um, it's kind of works similar to how OPS plus works when it comes to evaluating hitter on park adjustments when it comes to the hitting statistics.
Mhm.
The ultimate zone rating does this pretty much the same thing for defenders when it comes to playing in various parks across baseball. And when you put that toward Coors Field, obviously people know there's the Coors Field effect for hitters, but when it comes to playing defense, that amplifies things quite a bit because there's
Mhm.
any diehard Rockies fan know the alleys in Coors Field are very difficult to play, and even a hard hit line drive takes a really strange can be really tough to get to. You have to take almost perfect angles, and I can go on and on about this, but Doyle, he played outstanding defense all year. I love how when they showed during the Gold Glove Awards some of his highlight plays. I love the one where he made, I think it was in San Diego, where he was coming in. He made a very bad, as he put it, I believe, a bad judgment call because his first step was back and he had to make up for it to come forward. And he dove and then he made a great catch and then he kind of gave a couple pounds to the ground. That was a great. I think that was personally my favorite play of his during the season. Um, but yeah, all in all, it was a no-brainer. Hats off to Brian Hayes for winning it at third base. McMahon was going to be a big-time contender, but Brian Hayes had a phenomenal year at third base for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then the other one, Ezekiel Tovar, Dansby Swanson, I believe he was one of the top defensive WAR in terms of all players in the National League this year, but he led all shortstops, so it was no surprise there. But again, Ezekiel Tovar, the nomination is just another great thing to add to a successful rookie campaign for him. But all in all, Doyle, great job. It's a well-earned honor for him.
Mhm. Yeah, and Tovar, he's going to get a shot eventually, maybe even next year. But this year, Dansby Swanson, ever since he really came up well, he was drafted by the D-backs and then went to Atlanta. Ever since he's been up, Swanson's had elite defense, at shortstop, and I remember Trevor Story and him were kind of battling it out a few years ago when Trevor Story
Mhm.
was with the Rockies, and now there's a new Rocky in town that is in some ways he's put up better defensive numbers than Story did when he was with the Rockies, and it's just very exciting to see, and absolutely, Doyle, huge congrats to him. Very happy for him, and I think he definitely has a chance to win multiple Gold Gloves, and I think there's even a conversation in there where he could win Platinum Glove. And I think, if I'm correct, I think the voting is now open. So for those who are listening, if you haven't voted yet, go ahead and do so. I think it should be on the Rollins website, I believe. So just go check that out. Highly recommend that. Vote for him, and very happy for Bretton Doyle. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the great parts of seeing, young players like the Rockies have, like Bretton Doyle and Nolan Jones, and speaking of Nolan Jones, we'll mention quickly that he's now, I believe, a part of, or he was a finalist for the All MLB team for the outfielder. So happy
Mhm.
for him. So keep voting for Nolan, keep voting for Britton, and we'll see what happens there. So as we move into the bulk of today's podcast, we're going to talk and give you our top 10 free agent predictions for some of the big guys on the market, in the free agent market. And for those who follow our page, or at least our Instagram page, you know that earlier this week I joined with a couple other fan pages. We gave our predictions. So Tom and I, we're going to kind of give our predictions. You're going to be able to, or for our listeners, you're going to be able to listen to Tom's predictions because I haven't heard them yet. So I'm very curious. But I will say that there is one prediction change that I did change, and you probably know what it is, and it's the Shohei Ohtani trade, because earlier this week, or at least I think, what was it, on Wednesday, I think the Twins came out and said that he is basically, the team is going to be going, they're going to be lowering their payroll. So I originally had, let's just start with Ohtani. So,
Sure, go ahead. Well,
yeah,
instead of saving best for last, let's just go ahead and go
yeah,
right to it.
let's do. Yeah, I was gonna start from best to last, but you know what? I already started with Otani, so let's do it. So yeah, so originally I had Otani going to the Twins, just because the reason why I had him going to the Twins, because I thought, felt like the Twins were gonna do something. Like, I
Mhm,
feel like when they got Correa, they were kind of like, Correa was in the huge market for the Dodgers, Yankees, the big market teams, and really not a lot of people had Correa going to the Twins. That's how I kind of felt with Otani, until again Wednesday when they came out saying that they're going to lower their payroll, and I was like, oh man, like that's, that I think he would have done. I think he would have fit well in that ballpark, in Minneapolis. But I have a new location for Shohei, and I was thinking about
mhm,
this last night right before I went to bed. I was like, man, where can he go? Because it came down to three locations. He was going back to the Angels.
mhm.
Then I had him going to Seattle, and my last location, and this is my prediction, my final prediction for Shohei Ohtani. I have Shohei Ohtani going to the Chicago Cubs. I think, of course, the past few days, we've heard a lot of rumors saying that the Chicago Cubs' big priority this offseason is going to be Shohei Ohtani. And I think, with, he has, he might have a chance to play with fellow Japanese player of, Seiya Suzuki. I think, as a matter of fact, I think they were teammates a few years back, or at least I know, when they were playing in Japan. And when they were playing I want to say they played in the World Baseball Classic. I'm not sure if they did or not, but I do know that I think they were teammates in Japan at one point. So I'm gonna go with him going to the Cubs, just because I think that Cubs team, I think they're making some big moves. And again, we'll talk about this in a second once we're done with the predictions about who they hired as their new manager. I think Otani just. I think, we all know that it's going to be a big market team. He's not going to go to a mid market team, or a small market team. I mean, he might shock people, but I think the Cubs. I think they're going to get Otani. I think he would rock in that ballpark. With the pinstripe blue on there, and it's just something that I'd like to see. It would be kind of cool to see him. I'd rather see him in Chicago than LA, and obviously, but yeah, I think I'm going to have him going to the Cubs.
Like you, I thought based on a couple of different factors. I even looked so good went as far as to go back and think of other big time Japanese players that have played here in America and what teams they play for, from Ichiro to Daisuke to Fukudome, who played for the Cubs. I think to myself, what is there a commonality in what Japanese players are looking for in terms of location, team they play for, what kind of what's the roster construction? I went all I kind of almost frizzled my own brain thinking about this because this
Mm.
is to me this is kind of a landmark moment because Shohei
Right.
Ohtani,
Yeah.
because executives and writers, they use and analysts, they use this term all the time, generational player. It's used often to me too much, and it's overused at times
Hmm.
because how do you define a generational type player? But anyway, the point is Shohei Ohtani is I think a bona fide definition of that term of that label. He is without doubt on track. I mean, to me, even if just as a hitter, he's on track for the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, because right now, his with the second Tommy John surgery, his pitching future is a little bit in flux as to how he's going to be used as a starter or reliever, whatever the case may be. But anyway, so I thought about this a lot. And I think personally, money is not going to be the say all be all in terms of where he goes. He's going to get paid handsomely. I think it wouldn't surprise me if there is an opt out after year two, because let's face it, 2024, he is not going to pitch at all. 2025, he is going to start pitching again. And how many innings that is, we don't know. So it wouldn't surprise me if his agent works an opt out in there so he can maybe have the choice to opt out and go back into the market with both his abilities as a full abilities as a hitter and his showcase from 2025 as a pitcher, and maybe he can sign an even better contract. So I think that's a possibility. But as far as where he's going to go, I think he's going to stay on the West Coast for
Hmm.
one. I don't think he's going back to the Angels. I think, first of all, to your point about the Cubs, I think they are going to be in the mix. So, because real quick, I think right now of the 30 teams in baseball, 20 of them are talking with his agent, trying to gauge the value, what he's looking for, that sort of thing. It's going to come down to 10 are going to get into serious contract discussions. And I think 5 teams are going to make legit offers. And I think the Cubs are going to be one of them.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I think he's going across town to the Dodgers. I think that's the favorite. But here's a big but for me. I got a dark horse pick. I
Let me
think
hear it.
the Mariners are the dark horse in
Mm.
this
Hmm.
because oh god, I just think back to 2001. That Mariners team with Ichiro as a rookie was rookie of the year was just so phenomenal, and it just pained me to watch him never win a World Series, and that the Mariners tried, and I think with the team right now that they have with players like Julio Rodriguez, Luis Castillo, Robbie Reyes coming back this year. I think Shohei Ohtani will be welcomed with open arms, and I think he is a big piece that can really propel that team that's not exactly a favorite, but a serious, a formidable force. And I think he can definitely, I don't want to say overshadow each kind of change, overshadow Ichiro's legacy at that team, but
Hmm.
I think he can be a piece that can finally get the Mariners to their ultimate goal, and that is their first World Series championship. So that's the favorite for me is the Dodgers, but I think keep an eye on the Mariners.
When you mentioned Ichiro, did you see the video where he hit the home run right into the window of a school building?
Oh yes, and now and there was a video I think also recently at his age he was throwing a pitch off a mound at I think 94 miles an hour or something
My
like that.
goodness, yeah.
It's
Incredible,
amazing.
man. Yeah,
Uh,
man, I really wish, yeah, same thing. I wish that, I really wish that, you know, I mean, not Otani. I really wish the Mariners were able to win when Ichiro was
mm,
there, and it just it's sad. And like, listen, I know the Mariners, their front office and Depoto said some stuff, but I think the Mariners are going to be fine. It's just that if I was a Mariners fan, I just wouldn't be necessarily happy with the comments, but yeah, like I would absolutely like if it's not the Cubs, I think the Mariners definitely have a chance because of course during the All Star break last year or this past year, Mariners fans were chanting his name, come to Seattle, and I think he took that to I think he might have took that to heart, and uh, and I think they definitely have a clear shot, and I will agree with you. To a certain degree that I think the Dodgers, like a lot of teams, I could have said this about 29 other teams in baseball that they're going to be after Otani. Maybe not the Athletics, but it's just you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he's a generation type player. This might be one of the biggest deals, if not the biggest deal in baseball history. Or at least one of these teams, whoever gets him, this might be the biggest contract signing in their team history. If it's Chicago, it's going to be probably the biggest signing in their team history. If it's the Dodgers, it'll definitely be up there as potentially number one. And so it's just remarkable player. So yeah, like I think definitely the Dodgers are on there, but just for fun, I'm just going to pick the Cubs and see what goes from there. But maybe we'll see if it happens to the Dodgers. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if they do get him because I think the Dodgers, they have their way of tempting players to come over to LA. But again, I was just thinking about this the other day. The Dodgers, they're going to have to make priorities, and I think Otani's their priority. But I think if they don't get him, I think they're going to look at somebody else. I think Lucas Giolito. In my predictions, of course, we're not going to. Giolito is not in our top 10. I don't think. But I have Giolito going to LA. But
Mhm.
yeah, so let's move on to number two, to our second player. So again, Tom has Otani going to the Dodgers. I have the Cubs. Next player on the list, let me bring it up back up here. It is number two on the list. It is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. There we go. I got the name correct. Um, so a lot of people are saying he's going to sign with, obviously, like Otani and a lot of these Japanese players do. They sign with these big market teams. I have him going to a big market team, and I have him going to the Yankees. I think the Yankees, they're gonna they need pitching. I think Garrett Cole is kind of like their big guy right in the rotation, and of course, you have questions with Carlos Rodon, who
Mhm.
didn't have a good season at all over in Yankee Stadium this past year, and I think it always happens. I think, obviously the Dodgers are not going to get him. If they go to Otani, some other big market team will get him. I mean, maybe I could see the Cubs potentially if they don't get, because the Cubs need pitching. I know they do have Justin Steele in that rotation, and who knows, they might get Marcus Stroman back. But I think my two teams would be the Cubs and the Yankees, but I'm going to have Yamamoto go to the Yankees. What about you?
Well, it's interesting 'cause, Saenga had a pretty good year for the, Mets in their rotation
Mm,
in his
yeah.
first, season in America, so it would be kind of, interesting if Yamamoto then goes to the Yankees just across town. So that would be kind of just 2 star Japanese pitchers playing for the 2 New York teams in both rotations. Um, the man, this one was Yamamoto, I loved watching him, in the World Baseball Classic. He pitched pretty well, and I this is another one I was really fuddling with a little bit because I wanted to think to myself, the Angels, because Lord knows that team needs pitching, 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 and they're in dire need of pitchers. But ultimately, if my prediction or your prediction, even for that matter, comes true and Shohei goes to the Dodgers or the Cubs, I ultimately think Yamamoto, he's going to the Mariners. I
Hmm.
think with, as I mentioned earlier, Luis Castillo just signed the extension. He is, I think, the ace of that staff. Robbie Ray's coming back, and I think you add Yamamoto for a righty, lefty, righty, three-headed monster to lead that rotation. I think they are very formidable and a serious threat to, because let's face it, the Rangers, I think they're going to make some big moves. They're going to get better. They're going to want to repeat. And the Astros, they people are saying they're kind of whittling away. Maybe they're not as big a threat as obviously they were in recent years, but I don't see them taking a huge drop off. So the Mariners, I know they want to get better. They've got 2 teams to go through to get to the top of the American League West. So I think they're going to be big players for Yamamoto.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think especially these top two players, I think some of those teams like the Mariners, the Dodgers, the
Mhm.
Yankees, the Cubs, they're going to be after these guys,
Oh yeah.
um, 100%. Uh, all right, let's move to number three on the list that we have here. We have Aaron Nola. This is because Aaron Nola. I know he's got a qualifying offer from the Phillies, and
Mhm.
it's pretty big, and the Phillies really want him back. But it sounds like I don't know. It like. Uh, their GM came out today and kind of I don't know. It sounds like there was kind of some I don't know, negativity on like not negativity, but it's just like they're kind of expecting him to leave.
Mhm.
But for some reason, I still think that the Phillies are going to find a way to bring him back, and I have him going back to the Phillies just because they need that guy. And I just feel like why go get Blake Snell when you have Aaron Nola? I mean,
Steven, you're on mute.
there we go. Some like problems today, but anyways,
It's
we were
okay.
going back to Aaron Nola. But yeah, I think the reason why he's going to go back, I feel like the Phillies they're not going to give up on Aaron Nola that easily. I could see him going to the Cardinals, like a lot of people do, but I just feel like the Phillies they're going to find a way to bring him back, and I think with what they have in the lineup that they have, and I think with the front office the way it is, and it just feel like that team is continually getting better, even though they just haven't been like they weren't able to get to the back to the World Series this year, which is huge. But some people have them kind of falling back a little bit, but I think they're going to still keep Nola in that rotation. I just honestly, I simply don't see him going to another team. If he is, maybe he goes to the Cardinals, but I'd like to see him stay with the Philadelphia Phillies.
I know for a fact the Phillies are gonna be very active in terms of the pitching market. They have a solid lineup and, in terms of position players, both, basic because it just came out yesterday, a couple days ago. Yeah, why I say Brett? Bryce Harper is going to be the permanent first baseman moving forward.
Mhm,
So that leaves Castellanos in right. Walsh is going to play left, and oh my goodness, Rojas, that's his name, is going to be in center. So, and everybody else knows the opposition: Stott, Bohm, and Turner. So basically, and of course Realmuto. So the position players for them are set. They're going to be extremely active in the pitching. Just a little bit of a preview coming up. I know they're going to be active on both Snell and Montgomery, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But Nola, he was drafted by the Phillies. He's been with the Phillies his whole career. I think he's going to reject the qualifying offer, and Dombrowski is going to sign him to a multi-year deal. Um,
mhm,
so the so I don't think, because with Zach Wheeler, you got Ranger Suarez and Nola were the top three pitchers for the last 3 years for the Phillies. Wheeler is a stud. Suarez is a quality starting pitcher, and I know they don't want to lose Nola. I ultimately think he's going to stay in Philadelphia.
mhm. Next player on the list, we have the guy that I was just talking about, Blake Snell.
Mhm.
And because this one earlier, like a week ago, I was like back and forth. Is he going to go to the and this and like I think I'm even mentioned to you, Tom. I think when we were texting, I might have mentioned to you about this, but the Marlins, they've had a interesting offseason. They lose Kim as their general manager, and they got a new one, which is from Tampa Bay, which I believe it's a pretty good one. I like that move, and I'm actually now interested in seeing what the Marlins do. They might be able to shock some people, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Like again, they've lost some players in free agency. However, I do know that Josh Bell did opt into his option, so he'll be back for this
Mhm.
upcoming season. Um, I have Blake Snell. Here's a shocker. Well, maybe not a shocker one. I have Blake
Mhm.
Snell going to the Marlins. I think,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, people say, well, they already have pitching. Yeah, but why not get more pitching? I mean, I feel like Alcantara. I want to say he's injured still, or at least he was injured, and I feel like they could definitely use a big guy in that rotation. And I feel like if you want to get back to the playoffs, you got to have solid pitching. You can't because you never know if one of these guys is going to get injured or he's just going to have a down year, kind of like how Alcantara was earlier in the season. He kind of had a rough start. He wasn't like he was in 2022 when he won the Cy Young Award. And I just feel like the Marlins they're gonna bring him in, and not to mention he would be reuniting with his former teammate Josh Bell in Miami. So I'm gonna go with Blake Snell going to the Marlins. And in terms of years, I could see it being like a 3 or 4, maybe in 5 year deal. But I don't know. We'll see it. But I think he's gonna go to the Marlins. I just I think he would pitch well in that ballpark. I mean, he's going back to Florida, and former by the way, the new GM, he was from Tampa, and he probably knows Blake Snell pretty well. So I have him going to Miami.
Yeah, good point about the new GM. I just thank you for the reminder. Yeah, he came from the Rays front office, so
Mhm.
he didn't have a far move as far as relocating. Ha ha ha. But anyway, Snell, I think from the top pitchers that we have in this list, I think he is going to have the most suitors. I think due to the fact, couple reasons. One, he's a lefty, and two, he is the youngest of the lefties. I think we have in this list. He's younger than Jordan Montgomery,
Mhm.
which we'll get to later. God, this is when I went with him and Montgomery. They're not going to the same team, so I'm thinking, who wants the craftier veteran in Montgomery, and who wants the slightly more powerful finesse pitcher in Snell, because neither are, electric power arms, but Snell obviously has a little bit more of a power arm, just slightly ever more than Montgomery. You know, there's one team that just actually of the couple of few handful of teams that really underperformed and just dropped well below expectations. I know that they're all going to be active in the pitching market, but this one team in particular, I live nearby them, are going to be more active, I think, than I think most people would think, because they really have to turn things around for a number of reasons. And that's the Cardinals. I think Blake Snell's
Mhm.
going to the Cardinals because they traded away Jack Flaherty, who is not coming back. There's not going to be a reunion. He's going somewhere else. It's not back to Baltimore because that was a reclamation project for them that did not work out. And I think Blake Snell is the kind of guy, because the Cardinals did trade. Oh no, excuse me, the Yankees traded Jordan Montgomery to the Rangers. Pardon me,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
Montgomery did pitch at one point for the Cardinals, and I'm sure that the Cardinals want a lefty to spearhead and lead their rotation. A veteran, former Cy Young Award winner like Snell, I think would fit very well there. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to go with Blake Snell to the Cardinals.
I like that. Yeah. I think I want to say I have a pitcher going to the Cardinals as well, but that might be, I'm not sure that's on the list or not. And by the way, folks, those who are listening, you can check this out. I think the list that we're using right now is on Bleacher Report, so you can those out on their website. But number 5, halfway through the list, Cody Bellinger. And now this is a name that's probably right under. I mean, he could be arguably the best hitter in the free agent market. I mean, he was unbelievable this year with Chicago. Was named comeback national player of the year. Um, the Yankees are on him. The Cubs would like to bring him back, but it sounds like Scott Boras said the other day. It sounds like they're kind of, I don't know, like they're kind of, I don't know, they would like to bring him back, but it feels like he's just gonna test the free agent market like a lot of Scott Boras agents do and players do. So I have him going a little bit farther out east. I have him going out to the East Coast. I have him going to the Boston Red Sox. I think,
Mm,
and somebody was saying, well, I know his dad Clay played for the Yankees, but why not have a
mhm.
Bellinger played for the rival Red Sox? And I think it'd be kind of fun to see him as a Red Sox. And I think, and who knows, maybe Justin Turner will go back to the Boston Red Sox, and maybe he'll be teammates there. And I think with that swing in Fenway, and just I don't know, there's something about maybe Cody Bellinger likes playing in old ballparks because he played in Wrigley, and then he played in Dodger Stadium, which is I believe the oldest, other than Wrigley, the oldest National League stadium. So why not go to the Red Sox? I'm just gonna have fun with this. I think he's gonna sign a three-year deal with the Red Sox here.
We must be in sync here. Think I have the Red Sox as well.
I love that. Yeah.
Because when I think, first of all, I don't think he's going back to the Cubs.
No. Yeah. No.
I knew when he signed a 1 year deal with an opt out, or what was it, a player option for a second year. That was just to reestablish his value. The Cubs have that kind of, I guess you could say they were in that place where they had a couple of reclamation projects when it was Stroman, Bellinger, a couple of guys trying to, or also Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer trying to reestablish their value going forward. Bellinger did a great job winning NL Comeback Player of the Year. It's true, yeah. Thank you for the reminder. His dad did play for the Yankees,
Hmm.
so you got the short porch in right field. But I ultimately don't think the Yankees are gonna try and upgrade their outfield to that extent of a Cody Bellinger player. They're gonna add an outfielder, I think, but not to his level of uh player. But I do think with the Red Sox, I think he would thrive, I think, in that ballpark, because of course right field short outfield walls out there, the pesky pole. I think it's going to be conducive for him, especially with no ship. And he has opposite field power to the point where he can go over
Yeah.
the monster.
Hmm.
And they don't. Oh, they have Tristan Casas playing first base, so he won't play first. So and they, I'm not sure what they're going to do with Verdugo. So there is spots for him to play in the outfield. So I think Cody Bellinger will go to the Red Sox. But my dark horse pick is he's a California kid. He's not going back to the Dodgers. Obviously, that's not
Yeah.
that relationship is over. I would keep an eye on the Giants because they added Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto last year. Mitch Haniger was hurt most of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised. Cody Bellinger, the hitting balls into McCovey Cove like the old days when he was with the Dodgers. So I think the Giants could definitely be in the mix as a dark horse for Cody Bellinger, but ultimately he's going to Boston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, here's a player that's not on our list is Rhys Hoskins. Of course, we're not going to really predict where he's going to go, but I know the Red Sox have been in the conversation with him, and I don't think it's, well, at least some people have said, or some writers have him going to the Boston Red Sox. Well, you can't really because Costas, he played unbelievably well this year.
Mhm.
And I know at the beginning of the season there was conversation. Well, Red Sox fans were like, well, if Costas doesn't have a good year, maybe we could look at Rhys Hoskins. Well, now Costas, the guy at first base, he's the future at first base for Boston. So yeah, I think I think you and me kind of agree on everything that you shared about that. Bellinger, he just I don't know, just something about that Red Sox uniform. I think and plus I think he wants he played out west, and then he kind of played in the central. And why not go out east? And I don't think it's going to be season. I think it'd be kind of fun seeing it in Boston. So yeah, I agree with you there. Um, let me see here. Who's the next on our list? Okay,
Yeah,
Josh,
go ahead. Yeah.
Josh Hader. Who? Okay, this one. This one actually took pretty quickly when I made the prediction. I was like, okay, he's gonna go to the American League, but I feel like Josh Hader is more of a National League type of guy, because of course he's played only in the National League his entire career. So I have him staying in the National League, and he's played in the Central and he's played in the West with the Padres. I
Mhm.
have him going to an NL East team, and I have him going to the Atlanta Braves. I think,
Mm.
I because I know Iglesias was their closer this year, but you need
Mhm.
another lockdown guy, and I think Hader. With the way, and obviously, I think we both can agree he's not going back to San Diego, especially what happened late in the season. How basically he didn't have any what's the word? Any excitement about going out and playing for the Padres because of course the Padres, yeah, they were finishing the season pretty well. They had a shot at the postseason, but you heard about the thing going on with him in the front office and the manager and the coaches and how that all went out. So I I think the Braves are going to be his team. I know some people have said, well, maybe he could go to the Phillies, but the Phillies, yeah, I mean, they're probably going to get rid of, or they probably will lose Craig Kimbrell, and and so yeah, I could see the Phillies, but I'm going to have fun here and go with the Braves here. I think
Mm.
with the bullpen, why not? Like, there's no such thing as running out of bullpen help and awesome guys in your bullpen to kind of stack up with the great bullpen that they already have. I think Josh Hader would be the icing on top of the cake there in Atlanta.
These next two guys we have on our list were the quickest decisions I had to make. With Josh Hader, yeah, he's a very interesting one because he's one of those guys who has, I love his big swooping slider that he has
Hmm.
coming across the plate. And I also like how people think his fastball looks like a four-seamer, but it's actually a two-seamer, and it has a bit of a downward dip ride when he puts a little bit on the pressure on the laces with his middle finger. It's we can go. I don't want to get too complicated into how to throwing pitches. That's a different
Hmm.
podcast episode probably. But for Josh Hader, the World Series champions, they added a lot at the deadline with pitching, including Aroldis Chapman, who is not coming back to them. So I think they're going to add another lefty, and they're going to add Josh Hader to lock down the end of that bullpen because I know
Hmm.
Chris Young
Hmm.
wants to repeat. About a decade ago, they They won back to back pennants. I know they want to repeat, and Chris Young and ownership is willing to not obviously spend money like a drunken sailor, but are definitely willing to invest in order to win another ring.
Hmm.
So they lose Chapman. I think they replace him with, in my opinion, right now where they are in their careers, a better lefty in Josh Hader to lock down the edge of that bullpen. But I'm going to throw a dark horse pick in here for this one. I think Bill Schmidt is going to be keep the Rockies in the
Ooh.
mix for this one.
Hmm.
I think Bill Schmidt is going to not this isn't a swing for the fence move here. It's like he's going to go after Otani. I think he's going to try and make a serious offer for Josh Hader. As we all know, I think Wade Davis is the biggest that the Rockies have spent on a closer. I think in franchise history.
Yeah. Hmm.
I believe that. I believe it. Yes. So um, I don't think Hader is going to cost much. I think it'll cost just a little more. And I think Bill Schmidt is going to make a serious play for Josh Hader. So the Rockies, our Colorado Rockies, are my dark horse pick for Josh Hader.
I would absolutely love that. Otani too, but icing on top of the
Uh,
cake.
we can dream. We can dream, right?
We can dream. We can dream. Next on the list we have Jordan Montgomery, uh, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, I do have the Cardinals getting a pitcher, and I feel like
Mm,
Jordan Montgomery is going to have a reunion with St. Louis.
mm,
He's he could stay in Texas, and I understand that, but I think St. Louis, and I think he actually pitched pretty well in St. Louis, and
mm,
that's why they dealt him, and I think he's going to be their guy, and of course they have other guys on the list like Sonny Gray, who the Cardinals are really interested in. They've talked about they want to bring in some pitchers. They need pitching, and um, however, in this is of course this is we're not going to get too deep into this, but the Cardinals they need more minor league pitching instead of because yeah, I mean in St. Louis it's easier to pitch than Coors Field because the altitude, right, and stuff like that. But I just feel like Montgomery, I don't know, he just looked good. I mean, I keep saying this for a lot of players, but I, I think he pitched well in St. Louis. I think Mozeliak would love to have him back, and he did. Again, he pitched pretty well in St. Louis, so I think he's probably going to call him up and just say, "Hey, how would you like to come back to St. Louis for us for at least another year or two?" I think that's my prediction of what's going to happen. So I have Montgomery going back to St. Louis.
This is simple for me. I think he's going back to the Rangers. I think it
Mm,
was a solid trade that Chris Young made to upgrade the rotation. Even though, of course, they used Montgomery in a relief appearance as well. I think it's a pretty. I think it was a great fit. It worked out well, and I think Montgomery enjoyed his time there. And I think the Rangers obviously loved having him. I think he goes back to the Rangers.
hmm Yeah, I like that too. I mean, Rangers, I mean, he was arguably one of the if not their best starting pitcher in the postseason. I mean, I will never forget the way he pitched in Game 1 of the wild card series against Tampa, and the remarkable play he made. I can see. I think Cardinals are the team for me, but I think if I had a backup choice or number two choice for him to go would be the Rangers. I could see Baltimore getting him.
Mhm.
I think they could definitely use a starter experienced starter in that rotation, especially with some of the guys they have like Kyle Bradish. But yeah, I think I think those I think the Rangers definitely are going to obviously try to get him back because he was crucial again to the World Series run and winning the World Series. So I like that. I like that. So for Montgomery, I have Cardinals and Tom has the Rangers. Next player, who do we have? Which one is it?
Uh, Chapman, I believe.
Yeah, Matt Chapman. There you go. Yeah, Matt Chapman. So okay, so there's new rumors coming out. I think today that the Yankees, or at least for a bit, that the Yankees are interested in Matt Chapman, and they could use a third baseman upgrade over Josh Donaldson.
Hmm.
Um, I actually have Matt Chapman going to a American League Central team, and again, some of these predictions you can find on our Instagram page. Um, I have Matt Chapman going to the Tigers. I forget his name, but basically, I think they have a rookie. I forget his name. I don't really know his name. He just started this year, but I think they definitely could use an upgrade at third base. And I know some people say, well, they're kind of still in rebuild, but I think they're getting closer. Spencer Torkelson had a absolutely a stunning year this year. Unbelievable. I mean, crazy. I mean, he's kind of one of those underrated, under the radar type of players that had a much improved season than 2022 when he made his debut. But yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun to see him in Detroit. I think it could happen. But yeah, I think my two places for him would be actually three places would be Tigers, Yankees, or Blue Jays. I think, and I know even Arizona. There's been rumors about Arizona. They would like to have Justin Turner or Matt Chapman, but I think they're gonna probably go after Justin Turner more so. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna go Matt Chapman with the Tigers here. I think it'd be kind of fun seeing him in Detroit, but they need a third baseman, so why not get a Matt Chapman there?
That is a pretty good choice because the Tigers, they're still trying to figure themselves out. I know with a number of the young players like Torkelson, and I think the guy you're talking about at third base was McKinstry, I think, Zach McKinstry, I believe,
Yeah.
is who you're referring to.
Yeah.
Um, this is an interesting one for me because there's a couple of teams I know for a fact that are going to be in the mix for a third baseman. I have the Yankees being in on him. They're gonna definitely make. I think Brian Cashman is going to make a serious push to sign Matt Chapman and try to make them, as you know, to quote him, we're pretty I don't know if we're going to be allowed ourselves to swear. We're pretty effing good. I think he's going to try and make it even more good. Sorry, that probably makes no sense when he's going to make an even better team. So I think he's going to be in the mix, but ultimately, I don't think the Yankees are going to get him. Chicago media has been talking about Chapman coming to one of the Chicago teams for a while. The White Sox, I don't know. I think they're gonna try and stick with Yohan Moncada unless somebody
Hmm.
comes and tries to pry him away from him. So I have Chapman going to the Cubs. At the deadline, they acquired shoot, what's his name from the Nationals? Oh darn, I'm blanking.
Candelario.
Yeah, thank you. Candelario. I
Yeah.
was
Hmm.
blanking first. And he played third base mostly when he was on the field because he had some injury issues when he came to Wrigley. So with Swanson being the Gold Glove shortstop there, Matt Chapman being a Gold Glove third baseman, I think Jed Hoyer is going to really look to upgrade the third base position. They haven't had a stable spot since Chris Bryant left. They haven't been able to stabilize that position. So I think the Cubs are going to go after and they're going to get Matt Chapman, who is obviously who at one point with Nolan, they were the two best defensive third basemen in the American and National League. I think, yeah, ultimately that's going to create quite a brick wall there on that side of the infield. So ultimately, I think Matt Chapman is going to the north side of Chicago.
I like that one. Okay, actually, okay, I found the name. So the Tigers' third baseman, right now they have on their depth chart is Andre Lipsius. I don't know I think that's how you pronounce it.
I
And
think
of
it's
course,
Lupsi. I think it's Lupsius.
okay, Lipsius. Okay, yeah, he's basically a rookie. Zach McKinstry already mentioned him. And he was a top prospect, I believe, for the
Mhm,
Dodgers. So they might stick with him. Andy Ibanez is there. Tyler Nevin, actually former Rocky prospect. He's there in
mhm.
Detroit. I know he's bounced in between Baltimore and Detroit. Happy to see Tyler Nevin there. And then of course, Chapman's not going to play at shortstop, and Baez. That's a different podcast. Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna have fun here. I'm still gonna stick with Detroit, but yeah, I think Yankees definitely on him, and it was pretty funny, and I actually kind of rolled my eyes when Cashman made those comments. I'm like, are you serious? Like,
Uh,
and it's
good
like,
lord.
okay, like he said this before, but you know what? Maybe he'll do something. But I'll never forget. I'll never forget. Was it during the lockout when he just slept outside in a sleeping bag? That is just, I love that. It was funny. It was hilarious. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's like that's what makes free agency so fun. Like sometimes you're wrong, sometimes you're right, and but for me, it's more of like what, I'm gonna have fun. But I think realistically, it could happen. But I will say I do agree with Tom is that if the Tigers obviously don't get him, and I'm not really expecting him to. It's more of like shot in the dark kind of thing. But I do kind of expect him going to like either the Blue Jays or Yankees, just because I think the Yankees, they haven't won a World Series in 2009, and for that team, it's like feels like 100 years, you know, and so they really want to kind of get back. And I mean, they missed the playoffs this year, and I feel like a lot of fans are, again, like for Yankees fans, like 1 year is like I said, 100 years, of not making the playoffs. So I think Cashman will open his wallet and get some players, but for him to say, "Oh, our team is pretty good," or is very good, it's just like, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, you have some good players, but you need to upgrade your roster. You need to, you know, yeah. It's just, I don't know. We'll see. So Matt Chapman is going to be one of those interesting players to watch, but I don't think he's going to go to the National League. I just feel like he's an American League player. It's kind of funny how a lot of these players work, and how they stay in each league. But who knows? Maybe he'll find a job somewhere out west in the National League. I don't know,
Mhm.
or somewhere in the National League. I mean, the Cubs, like you mentioned, I like that one. It just like because I feel like there's a lot of teams here out there, like the D-backs, the Cubs, um, that are gonna. I think the Cubs might be a playoff team next year, and of course we want to make sure that we kind of get through this quickly so we can kind of quickly
Mhm.
share our thoughts on some of the couple of the managerial hirings. But I think the Cubs, that it might be a sleeper pick to make the playoffs next year with the way that they've been doing things this offseason so far and the way that they've approached this offseason. So I like that pick. Matt Chapman going to the Cubs for Tom, and I have him going to the Tigers. We have two more players. Number 9, Sonny Gray. I'll do this quickly. I have him going
Mhm.
back to the Twins. I think the Twins need some pitching, and I think they're not going to let a lot of these guys walk away. I think they're going to give Sonny Gray a healthy opportunity to come back. He pitched pretty well in the postseason. I think he likes it there. However, he's kind of shown interest that he would like to test out the free agent waters. But I'd like to see Sonny Gray back in Minnesota, so I'm going to have him staying with the Twins.
I honestly thought the same thing as you are, but I changed my mind. I know the Twins are going to be mixed to resign him. Ultimately, I have two. I have a favorite and a dark horse for this one. I think for me, the favorite is the Orioles. I think they are going to. They have a really nice, solid lineup and set of position players, and a lot of their top prospects are also. They have some good top position player prospects, including Jackson Holiday, Matt Holiday's son. Um, but ultimately, I think they want to really upgrade their pitching so they have a better chance for when they get back to October, which I do think they have a solid chance to win the division again. And my dark horse pick, another team that went through a deep playoff run, the Diamondbacks. I would not sleep on them trying to add Sonny Gray to complement Zach Gallen and Miro Kelly. To really have a three-headed monster leading that rotation. So I think the favorite of the Orioles and a dark horse to keep your eye on is the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, actually, of course, again, he's not on the list, but I have actually Marcus Stroman do the D back, so just FYI there. But yeah,
Mm.
I think Sonny Gray, it's again like not a lot of people because I remember when he was with the Yankees, and some people forget that he pitched for the Oakland Athletics, and he's definitely one of the best starting pitchers out there in Major League Baseball, and he kind of goes under the radar sometimes. And I remember watching him in the ALDS; it was just unbelievable how good he was. I mean, it just like whoever gets him, they're going to get a pretty darn good pitcher and potentially a number one guy in their
Mhm.
rotation. Unless if it's like if he goes to Arizona, he'd probably be
Number
number
2.
two. Yeah, number
Yeah.
2 behind Gallen because
Mhm.
I wouldn't say Kelly over because Kelly I don't know Kelly kind of. He pitched okay, like in the postseason, but he did have kind of those shaky starts. I mean, I remember Game 2 of the World Series, he pitched pretty darn good against that Rangers lineup in Texas. But yeah, I think he would be number 2. Where if he stays with the Twins, obviously he's going to be number 1, if not number 2,
Right.
behind Pablo Sanchez or not Sanchez Lopez. I don't know why I said Sanchez. If he went to some other team, he would easily be a number 1, number 2 guy. I mean, that's who he is. So yeah, like whoever he goes with, they're going to get a pretty good pitcher. So and then finally, number 10. Our last guy on the list for tonight is Eduardo Rodriguez. This is an interesting one because I've heard that like he has some preferences, and then he said, you know what, I'm really open to playing with either team or any team because I know during the trade deadline it was pretty you know, uh, it was kind of on the news that the Dodgers they really wanted him, and he preferred Detroit or at least the East Coast, and then going to this offseason, it was kind of the same thing. And now he kind of recently came out and said, you know what, I'm open to playing for any team that's available because I think the reason why he didn't want to leave Detroit was because of his family, and obviously that's understandable. It's like especially during free agency or trading, it's very hard for not only the players but for the families because you have to
Mhm.
move, you have to, it's very tiring, very, very, very strenuous on everybody in the family, in the business, and all that. And so I have him going to a familiar place where he used to pitch, and that's the Boston Red Sox. I think Craig Breslow, who has just stepped in as their GM, or at least in the front, I think he's their new GM now. I think he's going to do a pretty remarkable job. I think he's known him for a while, and as a matter of fact, I think they were once teammates together. Um, and so I think it would be possible that he does go back to Boston. So I have him going back to the Red Sox. I think it's just familiar, and I think I think he really enjoyed it there. And of course, he could stay with Detroit, but I feel like he's gonna go back home to the Boston Red Sox and be a part of that rotation because again, Chris Sale, you know, that stuff happened. So I think they need a lefty starter. So I wouldn't be surprised. And again, I mean, the Red Sox, like we mentioned earlier, that they might get Snell. They want a lefty starter in that rotation. And I think Snell for me, I have him going to the Marlins. So why not bring back Eduardo Rodriguez? So I have Eduardo going to the back to the Red Sox there.
Yeah, he had a pretty good relationship with Alex Cora, when he was pitching there.
Mhm.
I do remember, when an interesting moment where they were, The Red Sox are playing the Astros in the playoffs, and Correa has that little
Oh
time
yeah, yeah.
thing where he points
Hmm.
at like a watch saying it's
Yeah.
it's like time's up or something like that.
Hmm.
Rodriguez struck him out, and he did the thing, and then Cora said, "No, no, don't do that."
That was
And
amazing, by the way.
yeah, oh yeah, it is. You gotta, you kind of wanna don't want to poke the bear too much, but you kind
Hmm.
of want to
Yeah.
also kind of give it back to him when he gives it to you.
Yeah.
So, but they had, I think I do agree with you. He enjoyed his time in Boston, but I'm going somewhere else. This is probably going to be a wild pick and probably an unpopular pick, but I think he stays in the American League Central Division, and I think he's going to Southside Chicago. I think he's going to the White Sox.
Mm.
Um, New general manager Chris Getz, he has some decisions to make as far as what he does in terms of trades because I know he's getting phone calls and having conversations at the GM meetings about some of his players, particularly wink, wink, no names mentioned, Luis Robert and Dylan Cease. But if he does decide to try to really upgrade the roster and really push towards not contention in 2024, but progressively get better in 2024, I think they need to add a lefty starter because they did not have one at the start of last season. They had 5 righties to start the season. So they need to add a reliable lefty starter, and Eduardo Rodriguez, I think, fits that for them. So as far as that goes, I think he's going to go to the South Side of Chicago.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I think even like some people, I want to say back in the day, like I think was it Dick Monfort was.
Mm,
I think I saw this on Twitter. I think, and somebody was saying that uh, actually Dick Monfort was, or at least the Rockies were interested in Eduardo Rodriguez when he was like coming up and he was young as a minor leaguer, uh, minor league pitcher. And
mhm,
I think the Rockies were interested in him, but Dick Monfort basically said the no. Word on him, and it's kind of unfortunate because it would have been kind of cool to see what he would been like at Coors Field. Even though he had the altitude, but I think and who knows, maybe he'll go to the Rockies. I mean, the Rockies could definitely use a lefty pitcher. I mean, however you do look at the
mhm,
rotation going to next year, your two like rotation guys for sure are going to be lefties, so they're
mhm,
probably going to go toward a right-handed pitcher because the rest of the pitchers that are probably going to be for depth. Is going to be Seabold potentially. Of course, they should most likely bring back Chase Anderson because I know, like we've talked about before, Chase Anderson has stated that he would like to come back and play for the Rockies. I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Flexen comes back as well. It'll be kind of fun to see Rodriguez come here, but yeah, I think he's, for me at least, I think he's going to Boston, and I think. Um, and now like especially in the free agent market, there's a lot of left-handed pitchers, and I think they're all going to be pretty popular, especially this year. I
mhm,
think this is one of the best years in a while for at least starting pitching.
mhm.
With the names that Aaron Nola, Blake Snell, and all that. So it should be interesting. It should be fun. And that's the thing. Like for the past week or so, it's been enjoyable for me because I've been like kind of relaxing from the World Series and kind of getting ready for the holiday season. But at the same time, though, I'm like getting headaches. I'm like, when is somebody going to sign for heaven's sakes, So I'm like kind of ready. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens this offseason. It should be a whole lot of fun. I think this offseason might be a lot more, might be more enjoyable than last year. And last year was just crazy. It was unbelievable. But I think this year will be fun as well. And of
My
course, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. I just think sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I don't think I can't remember the last time when anybody signed at the GM meetings. We got an extension done. That
Yeah.
was, Max Muncy, but,
Yeah.
I think sometime of Thanksgiving, in my opinion, is when our first signing is gonna be. Thanksgiving week,
Yeah.
is when our first signing is gonna be, so and
Yeah.
then and I think the, winter meetings, I think we're gonna get multiple signings and
Yeah.
trades.
That's really when it starts. I think, however, I do remember last year there was a couple signings that were like, I think Jacob DeGrom was like a few weeks or if not a week or two right after the season ended. He was one of the first signings.
Mhm,
I might be wrong about that, but yeah, generally around winter meetings, that's when really the off season really begins, and then of course goes into spring training. And of course we're not going to really talk much about the Rockies, and because we kind of talked about that last week and the week prior to that, about their off season and what they're going to do. But I just find it very interesting how. Uh, and it was kind of spring all over Twitter, but apparently like some virus was going around at the
yeah.
GM meetings, and they had to move over to Zoom, I think, or something like that. And so I found that kind of funny, but I mean, I don't mean funny, and it means, oh, I'm glad they got sick. No, it just I find that kind of funny. It's just like, oh, they're going to Zoom now to to talk about some stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that actually kind of came out. I mean, there was no moves, but it's just like there was some popcorn for everyone to chew on, and kind of like, that we might be able to see this in the offseason. We might see some moves like this, or we might see this player to go that place. And um, but we saw a lot of managerial moves, and one of them is a big one, probably the biggest one we've seen in quite a while, and that is Craig Kimbrell is
Craig
leaving the Brew.
Council,
Oh, Craig Campbell. Man,
Council.
Council. That's right. Yeah,
It's okay.
there's a lot of Craigs out there, so
Yeah.
forgive me for those who are big Craig Kimbrell fans. Sorry, or Council fans, vice versa. But Council, he is going to the Cubs, and that kind of shocked me. I think it shocked a lot of people, obviously. Um, obviously he loved being in Milwaukee, but I think it was time for him to move on and kind of test out a new place, a new city, a new team. And I like it, but it was shocking because I mean, Brewers, I mean, they had a pretty good squad, and now there's talk that the Brewers just tonight they came out and said, "Hey, we're basically letting all these players available via trade if you want them." And it's just like, man, this is a team that's been in the postseason for a number of years consecutively, and they've been good, and they won the division multiple times, over the last several seasons. And now losing Council, one of the best managers in the history of that franchise, is
Steven, you're on mute again.
all right. There we go. Again, having Mac problems, so hopefully we should be able to get through this without any other problems. But anyways, going back to Council, it just like he's been such an integral part of that franchise. I think that might come back to hurt them a little bit, but I'm interested to see what the Brewers do. But for him to go to Chicago, like I mentioned earlier, that's going to help. I believe that's going to help their team in Chicago immensely, especially if they get some of the big free agent pieces on the list. If they get Otani, or if they bring in Yamamoto, or whoever, or Matt Chapman, for instance. I think the Cubs, with them bringing in Craig Counsell, they're making a statement saying, "Hey, looking up to the teams like the Cardinals or the Brewers, and saying, hey, we're not going to be that third place team anymore. We're going to try to win the division next year." So I thought that was very interesting, and I thought that was very, very kind of exciting if you're a Cubs fan to see that happen.
Yeah, and real quick, I'm just going to comment real quick comments on a couple of the other manager hirings for the Guardians. Stephen Vogt, he's only been retired for not very long, and he's going right back to the dugout to be the manager to succeed Terry Francona. It's unfortunate. He did do a great job winning two World Series. Two World Series rings with the Red Sox in 04 and 07. So Stephen Vogt, I've heard he was very well respected as a player, so he could definitely command the same respect as a manager. Bob Melvin, now manager of the Giants, good on him. He got out of that messy situation in San Diego, and he got hired right away as rightfully so as a manager of a new team. Peter Seidler, I don't know how he's siding with AJ Preller in that power struggle, but
yeah,
that's just you spend your money, you side with who you want to do. I'm not going to comment much on that. And here's the thing about Carlos Mendoza going just from the Yankees bench coach to the Mets. Interesting move. Don't know much about him, but if he can he can coach for the Yankees, you could definitely manage the Mets. So good luck to him, because he's now got the richest. He now is the manager for the richest owner in professional baseball. With David Stearns, former Milwaukee Brewers general manager, going to the Mets as their new president of baseball operations, I thought he was going to bring Counsell along with him now that his contract was up as the manager for the Brewers, but I was wrong. I'll come back to it in just a second. Ron Washington, he led the Rangers to back-to-back American League pennants. It shocks me he has been out of the managerial chair for this long. So I'm glad he gets one last hurrah. He works for one of the most, I don't want to say worst, but one of the strangest owners in Artie Moreno. I got to say, if anybody is interested, I think he's one of the best teachers in professional baseball. There's a clip as to some very amazing infield drills that he does. It's on YouTube. If anybody wants to check it out, Google Ron Washington MLB Network. You'll find it where he's interviewed by Bill Ripken about that. So best of luck to him. I really hope he does well with the Angels. That's a tough situation, but I think he is a guy who really can instill some discipline and some fundamentals into that team. Back to Council. I mean, oh my goodness, this just shocked me when I saw the news because it was not the Cubs were not even linked to him. This was
Mhm.
not rumored. This was nowhere. It came, good on Jed Hoyer for keeping this as quiet as possible. Him and Carter Hawkins, who's the his general manager, for keeping this under wraps. Jesus, it's Craig Counsell. He's got Milwaukee Brewers in him. His father worked for the team. Counsell played for the Brewers for a long time. I think it was almost a decade, but it was
Mhm.
a long time. In fact, he was actually on the Brewers when Trevor Hoffman had his 700th save with as a member of the Milwaukee uh in Ned Miller Park, now American Family Field. He was on the field for that. And Craig Counsell, I thought he would be the manager to get them to their first World Series championship. I can understand his thought process that, hey, I want a new he didn't think it was going to work there. He wanted a new challenge. It is kind of shocking that it's a division rival.
Yeah.
And I know Cub fans, the beloved David Ross, a lot of people think the Cubs did him wrong, but I got to be practical here, people. Got to remember, this is business. It's not
Mhm.
personal. It's
Yeah.
not about making friends. This is about business. And this is just like back after the 2014 season when the Cubs fired Ricky Renteria, who was still under contract, and upgraded with Joe Madden. And he led them to their first World Series in 108 years.
Mhm.
Counsell is going to be handsomely paid with a 5-year, $40 million contract. That's the highest for any major league manager in history. And I got to be honest, they're going to be active. They're going to get him a good team. And if they give Counsell a solid team, I could see the Cubs winning or at least in the World Series in the next 5 years.
Yeah, and they have a lot of solid players like PCA and
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of bright young players coming up, and
Oh,
even
yeah.
a lot of guys I've been looking at in the Arizona Fall League. They have a pretty bright team there. And just very quickly before we kind of start finishing up for the night,
Mhm.
I just shout out to David Ross. I think he's done a very solid job in Chicago as manager. And yeah, again,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
you gotta feel bad for him because, this is again, this was suddenly, this was, out of nowhere really. And,
Mhm.
I remember when the news came out saying, oh, he's gonna be, leaving the Brewers. I'm like, okay, well, uh, okay, where he's going to go? Well, then he goes to a rival city, Chicago, which is like right down the road, basically, and be their manager. And well, going to a team that already has a manager, and for David Ross to get fired, or not fired, but let go, for a council to come in, it's just like wow. And
Mhm.
I'm hoping that Ross finds a job. I think he will.
He
I, in
will.
my, he will, and I think he was definitely one of the best managers in baseball. And just the way, I mean, he almost took the Cubs team this year to the playoffs. He was just a few
Mhm.
games away, and I think in their roster was, in my opinion, not the. I mean, they had some solid players. Bellinger was huge, but without Bellinger and really David Ross, the Cubs team probably wouldn't be where they were this year. So I think. I agree. I think he's going to find us somewhere, and I hope he really does. And I think the Cubs, they're being serious about it, and it's good to see teams like that be serious. And whoever gets David Ross, they're going to be getting a great manager, and or coach. Um, and I just want to
Yeah.
say a quick shout out because I know we posted this on our social medias last night, but former Rocky front office special assistant to the general manager Clint Hurdle
Mhm.
is leaving the Rockies, going to the Angels to be the bench coach with Ron Washington. So very, very happy for Clint. Congratulations to him, but
Mhm.
kind of disappointing because he did so much for the Rockies the last couple of years in terms of the draft and scouting a little bit. But I think the Rockies. We talked about this before, and we're not going to really talk about it tonight. But the Rockies, they brought in some people, especially even former players from 2007, 2010, those type of years. Even Todd Helton, I think, is still working with the Rockies in terms of the draft. But I think the way that Clint Hurdle has been being with the Rockies organization and being able to help out with just helping out with the younger players by going through the different minor league systems through A ball, double A, triple A, and just kind of just watching different players. He will be missed for sure, but I think this is what he loves to do. I think this is what he does best, and that is being on the bench and being able to help out, put out a lineup. And the Angels are going to be good, getting two very good coaches. And who knows, maybe if the Angels, and I was just thinking about this the other day, if the Angels, if they're serious about free agency, if they're smart about it, and I know there's problems with the ownership with Art Moreno, but
Mm.
if they're serious, and heck, who knows, if they get Otani back, I don't think it's going to happen, but if they do, who knows? Again, if they're serious, if they can, of course, I know Mike Trout might be able to try to lure Otani back if that's possible. Who knows? Maybe the Angels can try this again. But with the history of the Angels, I think both Tom and me can agree that we absolutely love to see the Angels back in the playoffs. That city,
Mhm.
that fan base deserves to win a World Series, for crying out loud. They deserve to be back in the playoffs. But with the ownership and the way that they have not kept their word. It's just like it's sad to see, but who knows? I think coaching has been some. It's not really the problem. Again, I was just thinking about this just now, coming across my head. It's not really been the coaching that's been the problem. It's been the front office. It's been the
Mhm.
ownership in LA, or at least in Anaheim. So, but happy for Clint Hurdle. Happy for Washington. Couldn't happen to a better. Couple of people there. It's just incredible. And Ron Washington, he helped the Rangers go back to back World Series back in the early 2010s. So maybe he can do something there. But I think most importantly, you're getting a great teacher of baseball. He's kind of like the pastor of baseball in many ways. I like to call him the pastor of baseball. He does such an incredible job. So happy for those two guys there. Let me see. I think that would
Well,
be.
yeah, I'll
Oh,
just
go
make
ahead.
a yeah, no, real quick. Yeah, for David Ross, it is he if he wants to manage again right away, somebody will pick him up for sure.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say this as a White Sox fan, I would fire Pedro Grifol and hire David Ross. Oh, because of
Mm,
one of my best friends is a diehard Cub fan. He said, "Would you take Ross over Grifol?" And I said, "Yes, I would."
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because David, he's a guy who, as a player, commanded tremendous respect, and as a manager, he commands respect as well. He's that, and plus he's a former catcher. They make great managers. And yeah, for Clint, I thought his days in the dugout were over, but hey, if you get the right opportunity, and I
Hmm.
think the Angels could use a man like him who's kind of old school, kind of an old school man. He and Washington are kind of old school guys.
Yeah.
They preach fundamentals and discipline, so that should be interesting to see how that plays out. But best of luck to him. I really hope he does well.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because there's still like a couple or a few more managerial spots open. The
Mhm.
Padres, obviously the Brewers, but that's going to be fun. I think it'll probably take some time again before. I do expect those positions to be filled quickly because generally, when you go in the offseason, that's really the first thing you do. You kind of put your front office, your coaching together, and then
Mhm.
you kind of start putting your team together. So I'm interested to see what happens with the Cubs, not the Cubs, the Brewers, the Padres. I don't really trust AJ Preller, like we both
Oh,
said.
God.
I really don't expect the Padres to do much, but who knows? I mean, I do know that Gil has been in there, and I know he was a phenomenal person, but I just with AJ Preller, I can't really trust that guy.
Nope.
And of course, we need to conclude this quickly, but if they don't get rid of Soto, they oh my word. They gotta
Yeah,
get rid of some people. Like, they can't keep
you gotta
they
shed some
gotta
pay
yeah.
shed
R
some payroll.
right, and they said, "Hey, we gotta cut payroll." Then all of a sudden, the next week, they say, actually, you know what? We're gonna keep Soto for at least half the year." I'm like,
Oh, boy.
"Yeah, good luck. Good luck with that."
Well, especially considering their TV deal disappeared, so they had to take out
Mhm,
a loan to cover
mhm.
the second half
Yep,
expenses, and even before that, they spent payroll over budget even before the TV money went away in the second half of the season, so they had to take a loan out. So, gosh, I think they should trade Soto. It would
mm,
benefit them because you gotta get something back for him because 'cause they're not gonna sign him long term, I don't think, because Scott Boras is gonna take him to the market, and I think they're gonna trade Cronenworth because it's gonna be tough to trade the other contracts that they have.
mhm. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's gonna be a lot of teams. I mean, there might be more teams like the Padres are kind of in this situation, like the Brewers. They might be trading some pieces away this offseason, like I mentioned earlier. So, like, there's gonna be some teams that are gonna have to go through some dark times this offseason because of different changes within the organization, with the front office or the coaches, and so on and so forth. And we'll just have to wait and see. And I think there's a lot to look forward to this offseason. And for the folks who are listening, you might want to be able to follow us and be able to just kind of keep in touch with the podcast because, of course, Tom and me, we're going to be talking about that. And I think that will conclude tonight's podcast for us this evening. Please be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and of course, review all of our social media pages. Make sure to keep in touch. We love hearing from all of our listeners. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.